using captured Japanese machinery. By the end of August, American Douglas dive bombers and Wildcat fighters operate out of Henderson Field. Piloted by Marine aviators, they are nicknamed the Cactus Air Force.
We felt sorry for the Marines on the ground because they were having a rough time down there. We knew that every ship that we could keep from coming into Guadalcanal to resupply their forces would help our forces that much.
Japanese convoys known as the Tokyo Express race along the island's treacherous coast in the fight to resupply their own troops. During daylight hours, the Cactus Air Force makes Japanese reinforcement a high-risk venture. Due to heavy naval losses on both sides, the seas around Guadalcanal become known as Iron Bottom Sound. Resupplying the Marines still struggling to survive on Guadalcanal is near impossible.
We stayed abandoned for over a month and sort of lived off the land, and there wasn't a lot to live off.
We just didn't have any food for quite a while. At most, we had 1/3 ration, which would be 1 can for you for a day. We were really starving out there.
5 weeks into the campaign, Japanese forces amass for their largest counterattack to date. Marines hurriedly reinforce a weak point in their perimeter on high ground to the south of Henderson Field. If this ridge is captured, then nothing stands between the Japanese and the vital airstrip. The scene is set for the most dramatic battle in the battle for Guadalcanal.
In the fog of war, details are lost to chaos. The battles of the Pacific were no exception until now. As unprecedented CG recreations and eye-in-the-sky photographs tell the secret history of Tarawa,
September 12th, 1942. The Battle of Guadalcanal has raged for 37 days. Aerial reconnaissance images give a unique perspective on this bloody campaign. In the north of the island, United States Marines have established a 4-mile defensive ring around Henderson Field airstrip. Just a mile south of this key runway is a 1,000-yard stretch of high ground. It would soon earn the name Bloody Ridge.
The Americans had to hold Bloody Ridge if they wanted to hold Henderson Field. Once you've lost Henderson Field, then you've pretty much lost Guadalcanal.
At this crucial point in the American defenses, over 800 Marines prepare to kill under the leadership of Colonel Merritt Edson.
Edson, who had an exceptional tactical brain, spotted what he thought was the weakest point and the most likely point of attack.
If this ridge falls, then the Japanese will have a clear path through to the airstrip. At 10:30 p.m., a tide of Japanese advances toward the Marine positions. Flares mark the beginning of the charge.
They would come across in quite a large wave, extending right across this little valley.
Edson calls in an artillery barrage just in front of the American lines.
Barely clearing us and landing down in this valley. Edson kept bringing the artillery in closer and closer, and the artillery forward observer said, "Sir, this is as far as I can bring it," and Edson ordered it down another 25 yards, some of which fell on our troops, but most of which fell on the Japanese troops.
2 a.m., Japanese mortar shells cut the Marines' communications line. Without artillery support, they are forced back onto the outcrop where Edson will make his last stand.
The Marine skirmish line gave you so much confidence because you knew that your guy on your left and the guy on your right would die to save your life, and you would do the same to them.
As the Japanese threaten to overrun the ridge, the battle descends into bloody hand-to-hand combat.
One got very close. Billy Carey jumped up and swung a rifle like a baseball bat, leveled him. The Japanese were in amongst us, and despite their reputation as great hand-to-hand and judo and everything, they were no match for us.
The Marines hold the line despite mounting casualties.
I got me. It came up, landed, and I took 2 big chunks in the shoulder, a couple chunks in the butt, and 2 big chunks down in my leg. But I had a Japanese body laying across in front of me, and I sort of leveled the rifle on top of him and was firing from that position.
Despite fighting a force over 3 times their size, Edson's men stand firm until daybreak. Against all the odds, they hold Bloody Ridge.
That ridge did leave a lasting impression on an awful lot of us. And it made us realize just how fortunate we were to have prevailed in that thing. It created an area of pride that I don't think ever goes away with any of us.
After the battle, aerial photographs show the area surrounding the ridge potted with shell holes. Evidence of a battle that would go down in history.
Bloody Ridge was a battle of who's going to outlast the other guy, who's going to be standing after the last punch is thrown. And the Marines certainly had that spirit of we're not going to give up.
As Guadalcanal rages, the island itself becomes a killer. For every man who is a combat casualty, 5 fall to malaria.
The malaria just sort of crept in on us, and when you came down, you were down. There wasn't much you could do.
You had bouts of just uncontrollable shaking and chills and fever. Wasn't a healthy thing.
Dysentery. I don't think anybody in the company had a solid bowel movement and all the time we were in Guadalcanal.
Day 68, 6:30 p.m. After Bloody Ridge, the Japanese employ new tactics. They try to kill U.S. soldiers with their heaviest bombardment yet. On land, their newly arrived long-range artillery zeroes in on Henderson Field. Offshore, their battleships pulverize the strategically vital target with nearly 1,000 shells.
And when they'd fire a salvo in, it was like an earthquake. The earth would heave up, you know, when all those shells hit at once.
It was absolutely terrifying because you never knew which one was going to hit you or not. And one big one landed right in our camp.
By the following afternoon, Henderson Field is completely out of action. Aerial photos show the field littered with destroyed planes. Day 76. The Japanese launch an elaborate multi-pronged offensive against Henderson Field. But the attack descends into chaos after a breakdown in communication between its commanders in the dense jungle. The Marines eviscerate the Japanese.
After the battle, they asked a prisoner, why didn't you modify your attack? It obviously wasn't working. And he said, well, we were given orders to attack that point, and we were not going to question those orders. So that was that Japanese inflexibility. The Marines would have the improvisation. The Japanese inflexibility would cause them to keep repeating an attack even if it wasn't working.
The Japanese were tremendously brave, courageous to the point of foolhardiness. They attack machine guns by frontally and charging into them. They lose every time.
The defeated Japanese retreat into the jungle without food or water. In just days, the Americans will launch a coordinated land, air, and sea offensive to end the battle for Guadalcanal for good. The Battle for Guadalcanal, Day 87. It is now nearly 3 months since the U.S. Marines invaded the Pacific island of Guadalcanal. Since then, the Americans have inflicted a series of crushing defeats on the Japanese. Now they are poised to push enemy artillery out of range of Henderson Field and annihilate what remains of Japanese forces on the island. To the west of the Matanacao River, long-range patrols expect ambushes at any time.
Our watchword then was, death is only 5 feet away. And it was. Somebody could hide just a few steps away from you.
Because of Japanese lossless battles, many replacement troops are untested in combat.
My squad, we ran into a bunch of Japanese who were not organized. I mean, they were apparently green, new troops. I was in the head of my squad. And there in front of me were 3 Japanese soldiers, and we slaughtered them. In a few seconds there, I killed 3 Japanese who were almost defenseless. But that didn't last long.
As the patrol advances, they come under fire from a hidden sniper.
Suddenly, a bullet hit the rock near where I was and looked around. I couldn't see anything. Another one went right by my ear. I took a shot at him and missed. Suddenly discovered rifle was out of ammunition. I had to get a clip. I'm sure it was the world's record, getting a clip out of that belt. I got him through the head, and his rifle went up in the air, and he fell off to the left.
Yard by yard, the Marines clear the Japanese from the Matanacao area. It marks the beginning of a slow advance across the island. Day 99. Despite being on the receiving end of intense firepower, the Japanese High Command tries one last counterattack. A Japanese task force is launched. Their orders: to neutralize the Guadalcanal airfields. Once they are destroyed, the Japanese can safely land troops from the convoy's transports. In the darkness, an American cruiser force is attacked by the advancing Japanese.
We were cruising right off from Guadalcanal. We got right in between 2 battle columns. 13,000 yards, point-blank range. Now, this is night battle, so you don't know who enemy is and who is friendly.
A salvo of shells bombards the American ships.
We got hit with 7 14-inch shells through the bridge. First Lieutenant Joe Hubbard was walking